sense, because you don't want us to call ourselves the Center for Clergy Mediocrity.
Well, true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's the whole grace thing over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that as I hear you speak, I realize that I'm identifying some aspects of myself and my relationship with others and relationship with career,
Mm-hmm.
and have where that has led me sometimes is to be the hero and
Mm-hmm.
rescue the day.
Yeah.
And you know, you get a lot of praise and affirmation for it, and you know, it kind of makes me want to do it again.
Right.
But now I think, you know, if I'm coming to the rescue, because, well, there's one thing, you know, if something is essential, it's got to be done, or there are huge consequences, and nobody else is stepping up to the plate. I will.
Mm-hmm.
I'll walk into a vacuum. Now, whether that is healthy or not, I don't. You know, there's debates.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know, that vacuum may not really be a vacuum as much as just a tiny little crack.
Mm-hmm.
Then nobody's going to notice. But boy, if I could stick myself in there and say, "Hey, look at what I've done here.
Yeah.
Look how good I am." And I know that part of that comes from you know, an exceptionally difficult father to please, wanting to get noticed by authorities, wanting to be recognized. You know, so I'm as I hear you talk about that, you know, I wonder if I were in your shoes now,
Mm-hmm.
with 30 years experience and being knocked around the block a few times. You know, what are the consequences? What are the consequences to others if they know, A, I'm always prepared, I'm always going to step into the breach, and you know, my drive for excellence, you know, pretty much outweighs theirs, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the consequences for that kind of behavior?
It would, first thing, could really lead someone into underfunctioning if they know, okay, this person's just going to take care of it. Is there a point where you get past underfunctioning and you just, like, stop caring as much about things? Is that like a linear thing?
I don't know that there's any study that suggests that, but you know, a great many depressed persons underfunction.
Yeah.
So whether the depression came first or just not being able to do anything or accomplish anything leads into a deeper depression.
Sure.
I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah. Gotcha. Barring that, basically, barring someone reaching a point of depression where in that moment they cannot do something, I've taken away their ability to step up and do that something. If I communicate that, well, if this happens, I'll always be there to take care of it. And then, so it would be the permission, it would be the leaving space to underfunction, because rather than kind of taking people with me, it's almost just like, I don't care what y'all do, I'm going to go over here and be like this. I think those are the first two big things that come to mind. A reliance upon me to do the task, whether I feel like I should be the one doing it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You also rob people the opportunity of failure.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Mm.
as someone who's occasionally failed, I realized that my failures are my best learning moments.
Mm-hmm.
And why would I want to rob somebody else of that? The opportunity to fail.
Yeah. That's a, yeah. I'm trying to reflect on it with that in mind. And it's like, I don't know if it's fair to split, I'd say my brain is split, but the two thoughts are, one is like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's like, except for this, or this. if failure is bankruptcy, I'm not so sure that's helpful. If failure is like, the worship service is awful, that doesn't quite seem like it feels like it brings in another string over here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny with the worship piece, it's like God's still going to be God. I have been in some not well done worship services, and God's still there.
Excuse me.
Nobody has died from that as much as I have known. And then with the bankruptcy, and kind of my family in general, part of what drives me to try to help with things, I think I have moved on from fixing. I use fix in the terms of like fixing finances. I don't use it for fixing my sister or fixing my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Been a long time since I've said something like that. But knowing or looking down the road and saying, okay, well, if this is the relationship my mom has with my sister, and it's how my sister functions in it, likely this is going to be a hardened behavior when my mom dies, and then lo and behold, who is caring for my sister at this point? And so, and that's where we talked about the trying to find that space between keeping a healthy distance, like maintaining my role as just a brother and a son, and not just punting what feels like the inevitable is 10, 15 years from now. And knowing that if I don't try to insert myself now, history has long suggested that this is not going to be addressed. And so trying different ways to insert myself to try to bring about a conversation that might help this not be such a bad thing later on. But it's fun being in CPE and having gotten an MDiv and all that stuff, and still can't do your own family.
Well, family patterns, are just don't appear in the present generation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, family patterns go back
Ways.
several generations,
Yeah.
and so, the way I like to talk about it is we come by our dysfunction honestly. So, yeah, I think in many ways you're right. Dealing with a worship service in which somebody may be unprepared for it, probably nobody's gonna die from it.
Yeah.
It's not gonna kill anybody. But bankruptcy is is a bit more serious in the sense that the consequences last a lot longer.
Yeah. And I think my fear at the time, so I've been through, Katie, my relationship is in, relatively healthy state for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to dating and marrying Katie, I was also dating another lady for a year and a half, which is not as healthy, but the whole processing trying to work within this dynamic has gone back beyond that. There was a vacuum of sorts when my dad passed away that I obviously willingly stepped into in many ways, and then try to wrestle with this no longer just affects me anymore. This affects whether this person is my spouse or not. Now it does affect my spouse. And the financial part of it gave me fear, because again, not that I needed to be prepared for it. There was no way I'm coming out of undergrad with my student loan debt and ready to take on 2 other people, and going into seminary. And so just trying to nail the boards to the leaks to try to get farther down the road. And looking back, I definitely enabled a lot of over-functioning, under-functioning along the way, which is hard to think you're doing the best. I mean, you make the best decisions you can when you can, and that's, in a static sense, that's the way it is. But now trying to, like, undo those things, if not undo them, I guess redo the boards better in a way that's actually holistic for everybody that's involved versus, I have fixed this issue, which is a fixable issue because it is not a person, but I've done nothing to heal the relationships with everyone involved with this issue. And then part of my anxiety with all of that is I just get extremely fatigued thinking about all of it and just don't want to deal with it. And wrestling with, there are times where I need to not think about it if I'm actually distancing myself, and then it comes back to the whole thing. Where is that healthy space? And I'm pretty sure it's not a static space wherever the healthy is. I'm sure it ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess one of the consequences I thought of the being the rescuer or the fixer is, besides the affirmation that one gets, it also means that what you're looking at and looking for are problems.
Yeah.
Problems to solve, problems to fix. We had an executive director here before Melissa came, and he had many great gifts. He's still with the company. He has many great gifts. But he operated with a crisis mentality all the time. And he could operate in that, seemingly. But for those of us who were staff relating with him, we just found out that it was just very exhausting.
Yeah.
To constantly be, looking at problems and everything's got to be done now because, it's a crisis kind of thing. And I guess one of my thoughts about that is that it's very difficult to make principled decisions in a crisis. If you are in crisis mode.
And perceive it to be a crisis, whether or not it is.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
That makes sense. Then, given that vocabulary, to go back to the anxiety question, I think when I'm in crisis mode, I just try to make a decision now and just, okay, we have a plan, we made a decision. And there are moments where that might be helpful. Like, Mom, I'm going to take your credit cards right now. And there are moments where it's not as necessary. And what was, I guess it's funny thinking about, is it didn't seem like that big of a deal 3 days later. And it was one of those, like, I didn't think about it as much till now, but why did I think it was such a big deal? Because there are times where, like, I hear that, I'm like, all right, like, if I was preaching, I wouldn't care. Because all that stuff is, you read off of a paper, you know what I mean? And I guess it's that one piece. And then I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in there was the anxiety of suddenly I have to make the decision when I don't know the dynamic very well, except for what's rumored to be the dynamic. And that anxiety of the right thing. I think, knowing, I didn't want to come across like I'm trying to save the day. And so, given all things being equal, it did make sense. I'm going to do this stuff since I'm already here and Joanna's still driving here, so she preaches. Felt very healthy. Felt very much like I'm delegating this. And then seeing how it was perceived by the staff. It didn't really bother me that people told Joanna how well she did filling in for Kirk. I was actually glad people said that to her, for someone who doesn't preach but twice a year. But was frustrated by how Joanna seemed to perceive it, and how that knocked right into the rumor.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I think you have a devotion you have to go to.
I believe I do too.
Okay. So we'll end it here. And, but you know, if I were you, just a thought. If you pay attention to as you're coming to be making decisions
Mm-hmm.
about whatever, just to kind of stop and think, am I feeling anxious about this?
Or Jesus. But yeah, what?
And find out and say, why am I feeling anxious about this? And what principle can I use that allows me to be more confident?
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. I think I'd like to talk more about that next week, if I'm allowed
Sure.
to go ahead and name that
Yeah.
now.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to say real quick,